make sure you have the pictures. Is this okay?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I do know Marvin longer than anyone else here. When I first met him, he was 3.5 years old. And I picked out of all the instances and all the things we did together, I wanted to tell a couple war stories. Many of you don't even know he was in service and what happened so long ago. It was during, I have two different stories. It was during World War II. Marvin had been recently drafted. He was in Army basic training, where they turned boys into soldiers. The doorbell rang. I was 15 years old, and I was home alone. The doorbell rang, and it was Western Union Telegram. In those days, there was no emails, no phones, no iPhones. All communications, was usually important communications, were often delivered by a messenger from Western Union. Well, they were for, many were for happy occasions, like births and weddings. In time of war, some unfortunately started with, "We regret to inform you that your son," etc., etc. I opened it, and it said, "Mr. and Mrs. Abraham Shapiro, your son, Private Marvin R. Shapiro, is seriously ill and is in the Army Hospital in Atlantic City, New Jersey. We urge that you come at once." I called Dad at work, read him the telegram, and he said he would be home within an hour. About 15 minutes later, Mother returned from shopping. She, of course, had all kinds of goodies for me, like Yankee Doodles and tasty cakes, and gave me to give me. I decided not to tell her anything about the telegram. I just could not face her alone without Dad. When Dad arrived home, she thought at first that he was sick. In all the years she knew him, he never left work in the middle of the day. He asked for the telegram from me, and he read it aloud. After the shock, Mother looked at me with a look I'd never seen before. She was ready to kill me for not telling her about Marvin and just calling Dad. Well, things went well at the hospital in Atlantic City. Marvin probably had spinal meningitis, and there were new drugs in those days, and he returned to normal life and came home. When they went to the hospital in Atlantic City, Dad and came home. Mother fed me meals, but would not look at me or talk to me, and didn't for more than a week.
Hold on just a second. Give me your microphone.
That's great.
Put this in your pocket.
In my pocket.
Here, don't worry about it.
Well, is this okay?
Yeah, well, that's better.
Oh.
You have a new career ahead of you, Lynn.
After college, in 1950, I worked for a company that leased apartments in large stores, and I worked in places like Hackensack, New Jersey, and Allentown, Pennsylvania. I think it was in Hackensack when I was having lunch at a small cafe, and another man sitting next to me introduced himself and started a conversation. I told him my name, and he quickly asked if I had a brother, cousin, relative, or anyone by the name of Marvin Shapiro, who was a soldier in France in World War II. I said I hadn't, but I indicated that there were many, many Shapiros who served, and probably a lot of Marvins, and he said to me, I said, I'm sorry, probably served, but I said, many of them served, but they were not from Hackensack, New Jersey. They were more likely from Brooklyn, New York. He asked if I had a picture of Marvin. I said I had one. And in those days, before selfies, you had to wait 3 or 4 days to even
Little
see a
louder.
picture. In those days, before selfies, you had to wait a long time before you saw a picture. I had one of Bernard, Marvin, and myself, the 3 brothers. Bernard was in the middle, and Bernard being Bernard, he, just as the picture was being snapped, he got on his tiptoes. And after waiting 3 or 4 days to see it, and saw the funny picture, he was in the middle, and the picture was snapped, and we were all 3 or 4 inches shorter than Bernard. Well, this guy looked at the picture of Marvin and yelled, "That's him! That's him!" He told me that Marvin was in his company in France, and their job was to go through roads, highways, bridges, and fields looking for mines, booby traps, and bombs left behind by the Germans when they retreated back to Germany near the end of the war. We would look, and if we found anybody, we would find another group of soldiers to defuse them and remove them. He said they walked side by side, shoulder to shoulder, looking for wires or hidden bombs. Well, one day, one of the soldiers dropped on something, stepped on something wrong, and it was a big explosion. The 2 soldiers on either side of Marvin were hit. Marvin was untouched. The 2 soldiers did not seem to have life-threatening injuries, but they were taken away in an ambulance, and we never saw them again. Marvin was not injured in any way. The 2 soldiers were on either side and next to Marvin. The soldiers, every one of us, thought it was a miracle, and they promised never to forget that name, Marvin Shapiro. The guy I met that day certainly never forgot it, or the name Marvin Shapiro. That night I called Marvin to get a confirmation of what happened. He confirmed it, but didn't seem to want to talk too much about it. I don't know who Marvin ever told this story to. As for me, I kept quiet for 64 years. I do believe that there is someone somewhere who looks down and takes care of nice people like Marvin. Marvin, mazel tov.